It's also a bit of an escape route, because if you mess something up and it doesn't sound right, you've always got the excuse of saying, well, I'm not really...
It's easy to forget, in the whirlwind of stardom and streaming content, that some performances carve themselves so deeply into our minds that they reshape the way we understand storytelling. Certain actors don't just play roles, they define eras, reframe genres, and influence generations that follow. And when someone like Hugh Laurie, an actor who's navigated the full spectrum of comedy and drama with surgical precision, speaks about who shaped his understanding of the craft, it demands attention. Laurie is often remembered for roles that blur genius and tragedy, humor and pain, most famously in House, but also throughout a career spanning stage, screen, and music. What's often overlooked is the intense reverence he holds for the actors who came before him. This video isn't a ranked list or a top 10 celebrity moment. It's an exploration. Through Hugh Laurie's own words, we're offered a glimpse into the talents he considers extraordinary and why. There's a particular electricity in the way Peter O'Toole approached acting. Hugh Laurie once described him as chaos held in place by intelligence. And that phrasing doesn't just linger, it defines O'Toole's essence. Watching him wasn't like watching an actor perform a script. It was like witnessing something unpredictable take shape, live, and unfiltered. His presence carried intensity that was hard to categorize. You never felt he was just delivering lines. You felt he was discovering something in real time. In roles like T.E. Laurence in Lawrence of Arabia, O'Toole didn't just portray a character. He embodied contradiction. He was radiant and tormented, magnetic and unknowable. There was no line drawn between performance and presence. He would lock the audience into a world that felt both epic and painfully personal. Nothing about it was passive. O'Toole demanded attention not through force, but through that rare, combustible energy that made each moment feel fragile and fierce. Laurie speaks of him with a kind of awe, and rightly so. O'Toole had the gift of making unpredictability feel deliberate. It's one thing to be wild on screen. It's another to make that wildness controlled, to make it serve a deeper emotional truth. He could go from delicate stillness to explosive rage without warning. And yet, it always made sense. You never saw the transition coming, but once it arrived, it felt inevitable. There was also a kind of danger in his performances. Not danger as spectacle, but danger as emotional honesty. He wasn't interested in tidy interpretations or moral clarity. He leaned into ambiguity. He welcomed discomfort. You could never predict if his characters would unravel or reveal some buried truth at the last second. That tension made every second compelling. Laurie doesn't admire O'Toole because he was perfect. He admires him because he was brave. Brave enough to be messy. Brave enough to be complex. Brave enough to trust that the audience would follow him even when the path was jagged. That's the kind of risk few are willing to take. But O'Toole didn't just take it. He thrived in it. There's something eternal about the kind of work he did. It refuses to settle. It doesn't become familiar. Every time you revisit it, it feels like a fresh jolt. That's not something technique alone can achieve. It requires a level of emotional courage that borders on reckless, and O'Toole carried it effortlessly. His brilliance wasn't smooth. It wasn't polished. It was sharp, dangerous, and unforgettable. Laurence Olivier, sculptor of the stage. Where O'Toole played with raw power, Laurence Olivier worked with a precision that Laurie finds just as compelling. Olivier wasn't about chaos. He was about construction. There's a measured elegance in how he built a character, each detail carefully considered. Nothing felt accidental. Everything felt earned. Laurie sees him as a sculptor, someone who approached roles like complex structures, carving emotion into form, never losing the overall vision. He wasn't looking for surprise. He was looking for truth embedded in form. Each role, each gesture, was refined until it could hold the weight of meaning. But precision doesn't mean detachment. Olivier's performances simmered with inner force. Underneath the calm surfaces was a storm that never broke, but was always felt. That kind of restraint takes a different kind of strength. It's not about holding back. It's about letting the audience feel what the character isn't saying. Olivier mastered that silent language. Every pause was a statement. Every shift in tone carried intent. There's a kind of performance where the actor seems to disappear into the character, becoming invisible. Olivier didn't disappear. He transformed. You could always sense his control, his intellect shaping the moment. Yet it never felt artificial. It never felt overworked. His technique served the emotion, not the other way around. Laurie, having trained in classical theater himself, knows what kind of discipline this demands. It's not just about talent. It's about devotion. Olivier didn't leave anything to chance. He studied, refined, rehearsed, and in doing so, he elevated the idea of performance into something closer to art. That level of control could have made his work feel distant. But it never did. Because underneath it all was a fire. It didn't need to explode. It needed only to flicker in the right moments. That quiet intensity was just as moving as any outburst. Laurie appreciates this balance deeply. In Olivier, he sees a kind of unreachable standard. Not because Olivier was flawless, but because he combined instinct and intellect with seamless clarity. He didn't need to shout to be heard. His presence filled the space without ever overwhelming it. And perhaps what strikes Laurie most is how Olivier never used his technique to play it safe. He used it to explore deeper places. He didn't simplify characters. He layered them. He didn't just act roles. He excavated them, bringing out dimensions most wouldn't even think to look for. Together, O'Toole and Olivier represent two sides of something Laurie holds sacred. One brought volatility to the edge of collapse, and the other brought order filled with pressure. But both were fearless. Both dared to push the limits of what acting could be. Neither relied on charm. Neither sought comfort. They performed with purpose and conviction, reminding everyone who watched them that great acting isn't about showing off. It's about revealing what's often hidden. It's about making the audience feel something they didn't know they were carrying. Laurie doesn't talk about these men as legends because of their fame. He talks about them because their work continues to haunt the craft. They showed that performance isn't just imitation, it's exploration. And in that exploration, they found something permanent. For those who care about acting, who study it, and who are moved by it, watching O'Toole and Olivier is more than education. It's a challenge. The truth. Understand that the goal isn't applause. It's the truth. Raw, disciplined, human truth. And that's what lasts. Robin Williams was often introduced to the world as a hurricane of energy, voices, and movement. His improvisational style and sheer speed of thought made him an unmatched presence in the world of comedy. But for Hugh Laurie, there was something much more significant beneath all that noise. Laurie described him not simply as a comic genius, but as someone who played truth like jazz. In those few words lies an entire philosophy about how performance can be both spontaneous and deeply personal. Unstructured, yet profoundly exact. What captivated Laurie about Williams wasn't the jokes. It was the risk. Williams didn't perform with a net. His work, whether on stage or screen, felt like an act of emotional tightrope walking. The improvisation wasn't for decoration. It was a way of tearing open the surface of a scene to reach something rawer, something buried under the expected reactions. Williams didn't hide behind comedy. He used it to uncover the ache of being human. This quality becomes unmissable in his dramatic roles. In Dead Poets Society, he plays a teacher who urges his students to look inward rather than upward. The performance never tilts into sentimentality. It balances delicately between warmth and melancholy. There's never a sense that Williams is reaching for a moment. The moment always feels like it rises naturally from within him, unforced and necessary. In Good Will Hunting, he delivers one of his most restrained and heartbreaking performances. Laurie has spoken about this role with clear admiration. Williams's character, a therapist grappling with his own grief, never once demands attention. His power comes from listening, from letting silence do the heavy lifting. And when he finally speaks, it lands. It carries weight, not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. Laurie's use of the phrase, "truth like jazz," points to the way Williams responded to his scenes. He didn't recite lines. He played them, shifted them, let them breathe. The rhythm was never predictable, but it always made sense. Emotionally, it followed a deeper structure, even if the surface looked chaotic. That kind of performance isn't taught, it's lived. It comes from an actor willing to sit inside discomfort without trying to fix it or explain it away. There was also a profound generosity in Williams's work. He didn't treat scenes as platforms for his own brilliance. He brought his fellow actors along with him. Laurie, himself known for his ensemble work, respects that quality deeply. Williams had a way of elevating those around him without ever demanding that spotlight. His focus was always on connection, not just with the character or the other actors, but with the audience. Laurie has pointed out how rare it is to find an actor who can communicate both despair and hope in the same breath. Williams did this consistently. He never presented characters as either tragic or comic. They were both. Human lives are rarely one note, and Williams reflected that complexity without softening the edges. There was pain in his humor and laughter inside his sorrow. Even in roles that could have been exaggerated or caricatured, Williams maintained emotional depth. In The Fisher King, he portrays a man damaged by trauma, caught in delusion, yet radiating a fragile sort of light. The performance is erratic and dreamlike, but underneath it lies a clear through line of vulnerability. Laurie views this as Williams's defining strength, the willingness to be exposed, not just physically or vocally, but emotionally. Williams's work reminds audiences that real truth in acting doesn't always come from control. Sometimes it comes from surrender. He didn't shape his performances into perfect arcs. He let them unravel and reform, like jazz solos that drift before returning to their center. Laurie values this quality because it refuses calculation. It resists predictability. And in that resistance, it finds something real. Hugh Grant, the hidden precision of charm. Hugh Grant often arrives in the public imagination as the polished romantic lead, soft-spoken and mildly awkward, stumbling through love stories with a charming grin. But Laurie doesn't see him that way. He sees control. He sees restraint. He sees a performer who understands not only the rhythm of comedy, but the depth that lives in silence. For Laurie, Grant is not coasting. He is crafting. What stands out in Grant's performances is the clarity of intention. Every shrug, pause, or shift in tone feels deliberate. Laurie once described his work as emotional depth through understatement, a phrase that captures the sophistication Grant brings to his roles. He doesn't announce emotion. He suggests it. And in that subtlety lies an emotional honesty that many actors overlook in pursuit of larger gestures. In Notting Hill, Grant plays a character surrounded by fame and fantasy, yet his performance remains grounded. He reacts, listens, and absorbs. He allows scenes to evolve rather than dominating them. Laurie points out that this kind of acting often goes unnoticed because it feels so natural. But that ease is the result of precision. Grant's ability to modulate his performance without drawing attention to it makes him not just skilled, but consistently compelling. In About a Boy, his character starts as self-absorbed and emotionally detached. But rather than using broad strokes to show change, Grant works in gradients. Small choices, a softened glance, a hesitated sentence, guide the viewer through the emotional arc. Laurie admires how these adjustments never feel like transformations for the sake of plot. They feel earned. They happen from the inside out. Laurie also appreciates how Grant uses charm not as a shield, but as a tool. Many actors might rely on likability to win over an audience, but Grant weaponizes charm in more complex ways. He builds walls and then carefully removes them. It becomes part of the character's armor and later part of their vulnerability. Laurie respects that nuance because it reflects a mature understanding of how to let a performance unfold. Timing plays a critical role in Grant's strength as an actor. Laurie often emphasizes the difference between actors who wait for a line and those who anticipate the moment. Grant always seems tuned into the emotional rhythm of a scene, not just the dialogue. His silences are filled with thought. His interruptions never feel random. There's always something happening just under the surface. In a cinematic culture where extreme emotion often dominates, Grant offers an alternative. He trusts that the audience doesn't need to be told what to feel. He creates space for them to arrive at their own conclusions. Laurie once said, "He invites the audience in rather than performs at them." That distinction matters. It marks the difference between spectacle and storytelling. Laurie's appreciation for Grant is rooted in craft. It's about what the audience doesn't always notice: the restraint, the calibration, the choices that allow a character to stay honest rather than oversold. In Laurie's view, this kind of work often demands more from an actor than the loudest performances ever do. Both Williams and Grant, though vastly different in style, earn Laurie's admiration for the same reason. They understand that the essence of acting is not in what is shown, but in what is felt. They know when to step forward and when to hold back. They trust the audience. And above all, they trust the truth of the moment. John Malkovich. Menace, mystery, and mastery. There is something unmistakably distinct about the way John Malkovich occupies a scene. He doesn't chase intensity. He doesn't embellish emotion. He settles into a space and changes its temperature. Hugh Laurie has described Malkovich's style as a captivating blend of menace and vulnerability. That combination is not accidental. It is a construction built from deliberate discomfort, sustained tension, and total commitment. Malkovich has never tried to be palatable. He does not soften the edges of his characters, and Laurie finds that refusal both rare and deeply compelling. In roles like those in Being John Malkovich or Dangerous Liaisons, there is a subtle erosion of certainty that begins the moment Malkovich enters the frame. He does not charm the audience, he challenges them. Laurie respects the way Malkovich keeps both the character and the viewer in constant negotiation. Nothing is ever fully revealed. No emotion is explained away. The audience is left to interpret silence, to make sense of gesture, and to live in the ambiguity. That friction is the work. Malkovich doesn't try to resolve it. He sustains it. There's also an exactness in his rhythm. Whether delivering a line with eerie calm or pausing just long enough to unnerve, Malkovich applies pressure in precise places. Laurie has emphasized that this is not about eccentricity. It is about control. Malkovich makes choices that are unsettling because they are true, not because they are designed to provoke. He does not perform for safety or ease. He leans into complexity, into emotional terrain that doesn't offer clarity or relief. That commitment to the unknown is where Laurie sees the mastery. Malkovich is not trying to be unpredictable. He is trying to be honest within circumstances that don't allow for easy answers. That is a much harder thing to do. Colin Firth, the quiet revolutionary. Colin Firth represents a different kind of authority, one rooted in stillness rather than spectacle. For Laurie, Firth's strength lies in his ability to carry emotional depth without announcing it. His performances are often internal, shaped by silence, by hesitation, and by what is withheld rather than exposed. That kind of acting is less immediately visible, but Laurie considers it essential. In The King's Speech, Firth plays a man at war with his own voice. The performance doesn't rely on grand declarations. It relies on the quiet struggle between thought and expression. Laurie has pointed to Firth's ability to remain present while doing very little on the surface. That presence carries a weight. It signals a trust in the material and in the audience. In A Single Man, Firth takes the portrayal of grief into even more restrained territory. The emotion is contained but never hidden. It simmers, it leaks, it shapes every choice. Laurie sees this as a form of revolution, not through volume or confrontation, but through dignity. Firth does not fight for attention. He earns it through truthfulness. This kind of work demands precision. Every movement must matter. Every pause must carry intention. Firth doesn't perform in fragments. He performs in full character arcs that unfold moment by moment. Laurie finds that approach not only admirable, but deeply affecting. It respects the audience's ability to notice detail. It honors the space between words. Laurie's appreciation for Firth also comes from a recognition of restraint as a strength. In a time when performances are often measured by intensity, Firth's commitment to subtlety stands out. He understands that not all pain is loud, and not all transformation is immediate. His characters evolve quietly, and that quiet becomes the heart of the performance. A pattern of complexity. When viewed together, the actors Laurie admires most begin to reflect a specific sensibility. These are not performers who rely on flash or force. They are not concerned with approval. They are concerned with integrity. Whether it is Malkovich's controlled volatility or Firth's meditative calm, each of them brings emotional precision to the work. Laurie does not look for perfection in a performance. He looks for pressure, for the tension between what a character feels and what they reveal, for the choices that resist the easy path. What links these 6 actors, O'Toole, Olivier, Williams, Grant, Malkovich, and Firth, is their shared commitment to complexity. Each of them inhabits their role without compromise. Each trusts the moment, even when it is uncomfortable. This is not about a single style or school of thought. It is about discipline, about knowing the difference between performance and presence. Laurie respects actors who do not over-explain, who do not attempt to be liked, who understands that emotion does not always need a spotlight. It needs space. It needs trust. Laurie's admiration is not abstract. It is a kind of study. He watches these actors to see how they navigate the space between silence and speech, between expression and control. Their work is not decorative. It is deliberate. And in that deliberateness, they reveal the full range of human contradiction. What Laurie values above all is seriousness in the craft. A refusal to perform for ease or validation, an insistence on reaching for something that feels truthful, even if it cannot be fully understood. For him, the best acting is not an act at all. It is the pursuit of something real, and that pursuit requires not only talent, but also commitment, patience, and risk. Whether it's the fearless energy of Peter O'Toole or the careful restraint of Colin Firth, Laurie's heroes have one thing in common. They leave a lasting impression without demanding one. In sharing this, we're reminded that admiration, real, thoughtful admiration, is a kind of dialogue between artists. one that continues across time, genres, and performances. Hugh Laurie doesn't just admire these actors, he learns from them. And now, perhaps, we do too. If you found something compelling in today's video, whether it was a new appreciation for an old favorite or a new lens through which to view performance, let us know. Which of these 6 actors do you connect with most? Who would make your personal list? Like this video if it gave you something to think about. Comment your favorite actor of all time. And of course, subscribe for more deep dives into the minds of artists who shape the screen. Thanks for watching.